Hey everybody, welcome to Painting for Pleasure. I'm your host Tony Visco and we're going to do another winter scene today. What I've done is I've taken a shot and I'm going to put it up in front of you right now. Actually, let me just go get this piece. A little bit of a delay there, guys. This is the shot that I'm going to take. It's a winter scene. It's a barn, couple of barns, a house. Let's see if we can zoom in on it a bit. I'll give you an idea. We can see if we can focus that. But that's the shot right there with some buildings in the background. It's a very muted day, cool day. Not too much interest in the piece itself. It's a rather dull, cold winter day. But we're going to try to do this thing. I'm going to put it up here so that I can take a look at it and see it and watch it. So let's get started on it. What we're going to do here is we're going to paint the sky first, and I'm going to end up wetting the sky. Take and wet the sky down to. Well, actually, what we have here is we've got some water homes, or we have the sky, but we also have. Let me just go through here. We also have a mountainous region in the back of the house. This is the top of the house. I'm coming down here, and essentially we're going to end up doing it around the silo. And it's going to be cool, so there's going to be a lot of muted tones. Putting in a little bit of there's a little bit of orange reddish color on my brush here that I'm working with. So it'll cool it down a bit. So let's take a little bit of cobalt blue and we'll just put this right into the sky. And I'm just working with this dagger brush right now. Here, but just to give you sort of a general feel of this, I want a cooler feeling on the sky. So, what I'm doing is I'm working with. Let me put this over here. I'm working with a little bit of yellow. Where is it? My yellow ochre. Okay, and adding a little bit of blue from the cobalt side to cool it down a bit, and a little bit of my alizarin crimson. All right, so you see I'm kind of getting into neutrals here, this neutral tones, a little bit more blue, so it's going to be a purplish blue, purplish cooler on the bluer side general feel. Let me just put this over here and come in here, and see what I'm talking about? How I'm graying out the sky around on the area, low on the horizon, close to the buildings. What I do want to do is take out, by literally drying out, take a little bit of tissue and blot that out, because I'm going to leave that white, and a little bit of tissue over here, and take some of this out of here because I want that on the white side as well. Snow, guys, we're working with snow on the rooftops here, so we want to see if we can keep that as light as possible. Okay. Most of the stuff we're going to go over, we can go right over it. So with it grayer at the bottom in the background and maybe a little bit cooler, so a little bit of cobalt blue, and here's what we'll do, we'll make it more of a violet-y color. Right, so what I did is, what I did is I just took it in here and I added a little bit of this opera here with a little bit of my cobalt blue, and I'm making this on more of a violet or blue violet sort of stuff, and I'm going to put this I'm going to put this up here at the top. Okay, so it's sort of up in this area, and this is all wet. And I'm allowing that to go from one color to another color, and I'll let that wick down, and just because it's wet, it'll just sort of gradually go through the process of. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to let this all work together so that you've got a little bit of this warmer stuff in the background, but most of the sky is overcast gray, dulls down, it's snow. I'm going to be putting in some of this area back here. What I'm doing now is I'm painting this on a drier surface. Some of it's going to be wet, but pretty much on a drier surface in the background, because I want to bring some of this cool stuff into the in the hilly areas behind the building. All right, and I'm going to come right down in here because this is all working its way down close to the snow over here, and this is going to come into the top. Let's just make this a little bit higher. It's going to come into the top of the roof there, and be picked up on the side of this building here, and we're going to bring it over here. So it's going to come right down to that area. Now, that's in the background. To make some of this a little bit warmer, adding a little bit of yellow ochre in it, a little bit thicker. Let me show you what's happening. Now I'm thickening this up a bit, all right? Because I'm going to add some of this, and again, a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of cobalt blue, together with a little bit of alizarin crimson coming in here. Pick it up. All right, a little bit on the bluer side, but I want it a little bit darker, so it's less water. I'm actually going to work with less water over here and just sort of put some of this tone in here. And allow all of that tone to wick together. And once that does that, with a little bit of that gray in the background that I put in there, that sort of purplish tone, and a little bit of what I just mixed, which was the yellow ochre, this is going to feather out, and it's just softly going to end up at the top over here. It's going to softly go up into the sky area, but it'll be feathered up, so it'll create what looks like some trees in the background. But I'm keeping this on the cool side. That's as warm as I'm going to get, by the way, with the exception of maybe the buildings. But I'm trying to keep this on the cool side. And again, coming in here, the same thing. I'm going to leave this building here pretty much maybe white on the light side, and I'll paint that by using blues to do this with. And going to make some dark areas in these openings, which are doors or buildings, and open doors so that you can see inside the barn, or maybe even a door or two. And leave this house white over here, just like I've got it in the photograph. So there's going to be a contrast of some whites, lights, snows, cools, and some of this area here is going to be a little bit darker. I'm going to make that a little bit on the redder side, but maroonish, I guess, if I have to say red. It's going to be mostly all neutral colors. As an example, I took a little bit of red, let's say cadmium red, cadmium orange, cadmium red. I'm making a brown. Now, this is still dry. This is wet. This is still dry. And what I'm doing is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to work myself down with this kind of a stroke. All right, now it's dry, but if I take and I add a little bit of water to it, and just come in here with and make it lighter on one side, what'll happen is it'll form a circle. All right, it's going to end up forming a cylinder because this side over here is a little bit lighter than this side over here. So what I did is that in order to do that, I just toned one side and allowed it to allow the water to wick over. And you can see what's happening back here as this dries out in the background, my mountain area, my hills in the background. Not really huge mountains, but there's still hills in the background. So we're going to make this is softening up a bit, it's feathering up a bit. We'll enhance it here and there, but essentially what I'm really interested in doing is keeping that whole thing back there on a very neutral side, neutral feel. This will give you some example of putting in some tonal value behind this. And these are basically going to be my conifer trees that are in back of this building, maybe over here, right around that building there, maybe some over here. We'll bring it down a little bit more. Let's do a few over here. And we'll come up into this area and come across this roof line right here. So I'm basically going to do that, just leave some of these. And this is going to be forward of the mountains. It'll be a little bit darker, but it'll come forward of the mountains, or the hills in the background. Now all of these trees are going to do, I'm not going to do these in negative, I'm going to do these all in positive shapes. But trying to keep remembering that we're dealing with an overall winter scene. We want this to be on the coolish side, and almost, I want to say, sepia or dirty sepia side. It's really a rock hole today, so you really don't want to get into a situation where you're painting bright colors. I'm going to end up having, because this was a little bit, this area back here was a little bit on the damp side. What I put in here, when I put these trees in, I put them in with a little bit of water in the damp area, so they're going to form a little bit of just a tiny bit of a blossom that's going to take place here. So let's get a little bit more cobalt and a little bit of alizarin crimson, get more purpley. Again, cobalt and alizarin crimson. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here, because as that starts to form, right, I'm going to take and mix this. This is a little bit of cobalt, a little cobalt blue. Okay, mix a little bit of alizarin crimson. Come over here and get a little bit of that alizarin crimson. You want it on the purple side, but you want it sort of blue-purple. And you want, again, see this? More pigment than water. And I'm coming in here, and I'm going to help to bring this a little bit more, with a little bit more strength in here. A little bit more strength in this as we come up. Right. Same way with this over here. A little bit more strength, maybe change up the color a little bit as we come down. A little bit more strength. The trees are in the foreground. These trees are coming forward somewhere in that area here. And again, I'm going to do the same thing with this. And it's not a good idea. It's a good idea to wrap this. So it's better to come around to the as you're coming up. You don't want to stop the trees at the tangent point where the roof stops and comes across. You want to go either above it or below it. Okay, and we're going to end up doing the same thing. Maybe we'll put a few in here, behind that building there. little bit darker. You see what I'm talking about? A little bit darker here and there. I could put a real dark in here, but not yet. Just want to sort of address. I want to address what's going on around the buildings. So this building here, this area here, I want to make it a little bit on the redder side. Right? So what I'm doing is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do this. All right, nice strong color, but muted red. Not a bright red, but a muted red. That's just basically cadmium red, I think, mixed up with a little bit of probably some of whatever I had on my palette. This orange brownish stuff that's going on. And I want to lighten up the barn a bit here. This is going to be, since this is going to be white, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and I'm going to make this area here between this building. Right now the light's coming in this direction, so it's going to be hitting here, and this will be dark, so it's going to be hitting here. This area here, which is my building, my barn, this big building here, is going to be a little bit on the dark side in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to make that darker. I'm going to actually mix a little bit of red, that muted red that I'm talking about. Mix it up with my alizarin crimson and introduce a little bit of, into that, a little bit of my cobalt blue to mix that dark color. And I'm going to come in here and basically come in and make this darker. Now what I'm doing is this slant brush is kind of a cool brush to work with, because I can come in here and I can just do something like this, make it nice and dark. Okay, and in that the light's coming in this direction, we probably want the inside of this to be a little bit darker and a little bit darker across there, so it's just underneath that eave of the house, of the building, of the barn. So lightening this up a bit, making it a bit grayer. In this area here, now this is again my pointed brush. I got a slanted brush here. You can use a round brush, or you can use a flat brush. What I like about the slanted brush is I can take and use them as a point. Leave a little bit of white edge there. Come down here, come across. And I'm doing this on dry. This is not wet. The only real wet area that I had, that I started with, was the wet of the sky in the background, in the mountainous region in the background. So what I'm doing is I'm just setting myself up here, but this is a little bit lighter, and this is actually because the sun's going to hit here, it's going to be even lighter than that. So we're going to use yellow ochre on this side, right here, and then I'll put in some reds. So here's my yellow ochre coming down on this side to the roof of this house. Okay, coming across down here and into this area here with a little bit of dark into this area here. So what we have is we're setting up our buildings. Now I see that you're probably going to be disturbed by this little area up here, which we'll resolve in a second. what I want to do is just get a little bit of this in here, a little bit more darker. And then I'm going to lift out some of that color in there. Okay, so as we move along, what we've just done is we've constructed somewhat this barn in terms of light hitting this, so this area is going to be lighter, and this is going to be lighter here, and that's going to be lighter there as we go across. But this and this building here are going to be white, and that building is going to be white. That's going to be dark. Handling a white building. Now, we'll go back with this, so just bear with me for a second. But handling a white building, what I want to do is I want to put my wash in here. We'll do some clear water in here, right? And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of tone from the stuff that I've been mixing on the palette. Now, this is all water. I'm just toning that down, toning that a little bit. From here to there. And I'm going to put a little bit of light shadow back here. And we're going to do the same thing with the side of this particular building right here in terms of doing something like that. So a few strokes, and this kind of piece pulls together pretty rapidly. I'm going to dab this a little bit so it's lighter to darker. Again, a little dab there, and make this a little bit lighter there so it's light to dark. Let's take a little bit of Naples yellow. I'm going to introduce a little bit of the Naples yellow in here. Into this, and it's going to change this up a bit. So it's almost green. Right, soften that up a bit there. And the same thing with this here. We're going to take a little bit of lavender. If you don't have lavender, you can use cobalt blue, very watery down cobalt blue with a little bit of cerulean blue together, and it'll work the same way. But again, this side we're making it shadows, blue shadows. Shadowed area here. Little shadow underneath the overhangs. Little shadows underneath the overhangs. This is a pointed, the silo has a point at the top of it. We'll just work that there. We're just going to enhance it a little bit later. Let's put in some darks where our door is. Our door is over here, maybe over here too. But we've got dark Now it doesn't have to be dark. When I say dark, I'm talking about more pigment now, but we can make it bright. If I follow the if I do this, and this is what's going to be interesting. If I do this like I am looking at the doors, these doors tend to be green doors that they have here, and we can actually put those in if we want. Only I'm going to use cerulean blue to do this. Right, cerulean blue as I come across. We'll do that. It's a big door, and we'll do that. And this, we're going to do the same thing right here. We'll do cerulean blue. I'm going to darken that up a bit. All right, so that's something that's nice and punchy. I have a door here that I've got something that's going on in here. So I want to lighten, maybe it's a fence. Let's do this. We want to lighten this up as it comes across. Just make this, we're going to make this a wooden fence right there. Make it extend right over to the silo. By lifting some of that color up. Okay. That sets this forward because it's lighter, and that dark area back there a little bit. And we're going to just sort of come down with some light in this area. We're going to make that, we're going to actually do some siding, some barnboard siding on that. Same thing with this here. We can just sort of come down with this little siding here. Lighter. And considering that now we have to sort of define this a little bit more because I'm losing the definition of this building, we want to take some clear water and sharpen this edge up a bit so the building itself stands out a bit more. And normally, if I were not painting this on camera, I'd be turning this board, but I can't do that. You know, it's interesting when you're right-handed, you're favoring certain areas of the painting. But let's go actually bring this right up here. Take away some of this stuff here and bring this down a bit more. And see if I can put a little bit of that in there. So we'll make this make that the front of it a little bit brighter. I'm using a very, very little cerulean blue, very, very washed out cerulean blue to do that. Same way with this here, we're going to end up taking a little bit of washed out cerulean blue over here and doing the same thing. It's a white home. Darken that area up a little bit more. Make that area nice and dark. And we're going to do the same thing with this here, because we got a big door. Whoops. So let's get some real, let's say the door is, we're going to end up making it darker. And we're going to make this door here like it's opening up. I'm removing some of that, let that dry that way. So I'm setting up the buildings in the background. We also want to do something with regard to the trees that I've got going over there. So I'm going to take this wonderful little brush that I have here, this Rigger script brush. And we're going to start to just create by using this thin line, this thin brush. We just want to create some of this. This should be dry enough right now, so when I can start to create some of these tree trunks, tree limbs, these thin limbs that go up here. I am basically coming up. I'll fill that in later. Over. Following roughly my sketch. And slowly start to build these wonderful tree limbs, twigs that happen across, help this all out. Put one over here as well. All this is a mixture of my reds and my, whatever I had on the palette actually, my red and blue, and just very interestingly creating this all of these trees that lost their leaves over the fall. This is winter time. Softly coming out against these. You want to make these darker. and just lightly, just touching this stuff. A little bit of actually, here's what. So let me see what I'm doing. I got to see this mess that's on here. I'm just getting a little bit of a puddle stuff, and I'm running this real thin brush in there, and picking it up and allowing it to literally just sort of work its magic and go wherever it wants to go. And you notice it's skipping as I do this. I'm not creating continual lines. There's a lot of skipping that's taking place. You know, you're putting it down here and you're creating sort of light areas that are hitting these twigs and branches and so forth. So you don't get a constant continual value that's going all the way up there. It skips a little bit more. Let's take this here, for instance. Here's one here coming up this way. And we've got these wonderful, again, and actually, you know what? I'll tell you what. You can do them in other colors. You don't have to always do them in the same situation. Let me pick some of this cerulean blue to show you what I'm talking about. Instead of using that color, we're picking up some cerulean blue here and there, and we're just going to change this up a bit. All right, so some of these branches that are coming off, we can change up the color a bit, give it a little bit more interest. Okay, a little bit of purple. Mix that in with some alizarin crimson and blue and create that sort of purplish color. And again, you're keeping this soft, changing it up here and there. I'm getting into some of these areas that are wet. And then some of this stuff is going to bleed together. So that's perfectly okay. Bring that tree out here instead of leaving that tree down there. We'll bring that tree out a little bit more. And we'll fill these in a little bit more as we go forward. So let's get them a little darker down in this area here too as well. We'll get a little thicker brush. And we'll create maybe these a little deeper limb. Probably not a good place to put the tree, actually, but we'll see. No, not a good place to put the tree. Not a good place to put the tree, so we'll have to dummy that up. I went right over that thick area where I had the dark going in. So let's see if we can fix that. Let's do this. Let's put this guy down here. Alright, so normally what would happen is that I would do these trees first, these Alright. Before I even did those thin limbs. I didn't do it this time around. I don't know why I didn't do it that way, but I should have. Let's put this one, that one behind that barn there. This one we're going to end up having to do it in front of the barn. I've already done that. So we're just going to create a big tree and we'll put it right down here. Okay. So we have, what we're doing is we're covering our mistake is what we're doing, hopefully. What I'm doing is I'm just taking some color like, well, to give you an example, some burnt sienna and adding it into this dark area that I have here. That dark was a combination of the cobalt blue, actually the dark trees I'm using a little bit of French ultramarine blue along with burnt sienna to create these darks. For instance, this dark in here. Okay, so we'll fix all of that up. A little bit dark here. Some of those trees over there, we're going to darken this up. And so we've got 2 trees here, 2 trees here. Maybe we're going to put another one here. We'll put one in there. Make sure that we got something else over here. Yeah, all right. Just bring those right down there and let it go right behind this building. All right, so let's say that's our trees. And before we do anything else, we want to wet this area, wet this in here. Some snow. This should be all grounded. So we're adding a little bit of the combination of my cerulean blue and my opera or alizarin crimson to create this little stuff here that's going on. I'm going to bring that around here. Maybe make this a little bit darker there. Come over. Snow. So let's, before we do all of the foreground, we want to get this thing a little bit better in terms of a little bit richer, a little bit more interesting. Start creating some a little bit brighter area here. Deeper, darker, more intense yellow ochre here. So it's a dry brush. What I'm dealing with is a dry brush effect here to darken that up a bit. I want to take and bring a little bit of this tone back down. I lost all my tone here. So this silo, a little bit more of this brown, maybe we'll darken it up a bit there. Okay. Darken that up a little bit. We need a bit of a shadow. We need a bit of a dark shadow, darker shadow, I suppose. Underneath the overhang of this building. Alright, and the same way with it coming down from here and over like that. And we actually have a shadow coming down this way. We'll define that a little bit more. We got this nice shadow under the house, and we got maybe a couple of windows. May have to clean up some of this in a bit. Let's do some dark windows. Darker windows in certain areas. How about here? We'll bring this down and make this more interesting. This more interesting, and maybe we'll come across this way. Soften up that. And this. Do something like that. We need a little bit of blue. Here. Make that stand out a little bit more. Okay, so let's try something else. We got most of the stuff is in place. We want to get, I want to get a little bit more interest in some of these areas over here. I'm going to try a little bit of a dry brush effect. Well, that's too big a fan brush, so I may have to go back and do it with my little rigger. This area right here, these trees need to change up their value a little bit here and there. So we're going to end up doing that, but I want to put in some of the darker areas for the windows. So let's just get our darks, and we're going to put in maybe a dark area here. Here, a door. Okay, and so we have over here this, a couple of these. I'm taking the side of this brush a little bit, taking a little bit of this, actually what I'm doing is I'm taking a little bit of this stuff that's over here, a little bit on the wet side, and just scraping in some of this to look more like branches and stuff. Okay, so what I've got is I've got all my kind of cool stuff going. My trees are done pretty much. My trees are done in terms of all of the stuff that's going on up here. I may enhance it a bit here and there. And my buildings are pretty much in place. And there's not a lot that I'm going to do. I want to take out some light areas, and then we'll just put the snow in. Now the reason I didn't make this dominant is because it was too close to the center, and I didn't want necessarily to have your attention there. I wanted it. I don't want it really super dominant. I want you to see it. Don't misunderstand me. I want you to see it. I want you to know it's there, but I don't want it overly dominant, because I'm not interested in having you recognize that as the main focus. Now, I may have to pull it back out a bit. I'm going to end up darkening this up even more. All right, that makes it a little bit better. I want to take some of this stuff out. I want to lighten some of these things. So I'm just taking some water and lifting this out to make it a little bit on the lighter side where the sun is hitting it. And there's going to be a bit of a shadow. All right. Here and there. Okay. That was a little, I think I want that a little lighter. And I'm going to do the same with some of the tree trunks. I want to lift out just a little bit too dark all over. That's okay there. What I'm really suggesting here is that we don't necessarily want to have the trees with continuous value going all the way up. Some of it can be lighter, some of it can be darker. I need to get a little bit more of this stuff in here. Let's get a little bit more of this going on. What I'm doing is I'm mixing a little bit of alizarin crimson with my cerulean blue. Change that up a bit. And I think what I'm going to do is come back here and come around this building into the tree, and then back of this tree up here. We'll just come right over. Make that a little bit more interesting. Trying to pop that out a bit. Because I lost it all. We ended up having our trees fade away to nothing. Okay. A little bit of red. Mix it up a bit. Okay. And a little bit more red in here too. What I'm doing is I just didn't like the color too much. I needed to change it up a bit. All right, so we got that's all dark around there, and the this building here coming down here. Now I'm going to end up letting that dry, and then I'm going to end up probably throwing a little bit of white enhancement in here to just help that along. And the same way with this. A couple of dark areas in there to help it about. So it's a cold, cool, I guess cool day back there. I'm going to just wash all of this in now. This is my snow ground. And let me just clean my palette so I can get some clean snow, and I'll get right back to you. Okay, so let's do this. Let's wet it down. Let's wet the whole area. We're just going to float some snow in. Snow on the roof. Cobalt blue, opera, some shadows, and let it go. We're going to let this thoroughly dry, and then I'll come back.